Another Wednesday, another edition of Ask Chuck Dixon. This is where you, the fans, the geeks, the geekettes, the enthusiasts, the readers, get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Now, if you want to ask me a question yourself and take a chance that you might just hear your name spoken on the internet, you can email me directly at brunobookstore@gmail.com. Ask me any question you want, make any comment. But that's the place to reach me. I check it every day. It's the most sure way to get your question to me. And speaking of questions, let's go to our first one. RB Probst says, how was working on the Secret Six Tangent Comics book? Uh, Did you get to bring any ideas for character reworks to the table, or did you work off a Bible that Dan Jurgens constructed? Um, yeah, this was kind of a month-long stunt. It was like a one-shot event. Might have taken place over the summer. I'm not sure. I remember I wrote this while I was still at CrossGen. Uh, I, Toward the end of days at CrossGen, we were released from our exclusive contracts because we were either getting only part of our salary or in some cases no salary. Uh, so in those final days, I wrote a number of projects for companies outside of CrossGen. And Dan Jurgens was kind enough to ask me to contribute to the Secret Six. At least I think that's when it happened. Anyway, I jumped at the chance to work with Tom Grummett. I think there was no overall story given to me. I believe. I mean, I think each one of these books was an origin story, and I believe I was given the list of characters to recreate, established DC Comics characters to be thought of in a whole new way in a whole new universe. Basically, just riffing off their names. And if I remember correctly, Dan simply handed out a list of 6 names, and I went for it. And they did the list of names because we didn't want to be repeating characters throughout the different books. So yeah, it was fun. It was different. I'm not sure that I would want to write any more issues of these characters, but it was neat just working with the building blocks of creating a new team of characters, even if they were never ever going to be seen again. I don't know what the whole idea behind this was. Maybe the idea was like a scattershot kind of thing, that maybe if we do this, one of these might catch on, but I don't believe any of them did. But it was cool. It was fun. And as I said, I got to work with Tom Grummett again. Always, always a treat. Chuck Johnson, with your work on something like SpongeBob Squarepants, do you purposely write it so both kids and adults can enjoy it? If so, is that more difficult or time consuming than writing directly to one audience? Well, humor is always more time consuming, at least for me. I have to spend twice the amount of time on a humor story that I do on a straight dramatic story. Mostly because you can sort of riff drama. You create your dramatic situation and populate it with interesting characters and clever dialogue, and you move the plot along, and everybody's happy. But humor demands something more visceral. It demands that you laugh at it. so, um, so writing a story can make you cry or make you laugh or scare you are the toughest things. They're the toughest things to write. That said, I enjoy writing humor. I like writing humor. Mostly I just write what makes me laugh. And the thing is, you're writing a comic book primarily for kids, but you want adults to enjoy it. But still, your primary audience is kids, and your primary consideration is kids. And children are the toughest audience in the world because they demand story. They want to know what's going to happen next. And what happens next better be interesting enough to make them wonder what's going to happen after that. So, I mean, this is why stories like Little Red Riding Hood and Three Little Bears are still around, because those are good, solid, suspense-driven stories. What happens next? Are Hansel and Gretel ever going to get out of that house made out of candy? It's simple things like that. It may seem simple, but you got to come up with new stories. You got to come up with new, good, solid stories plainly told. Keep a child entertained. And it's not because children have a short attention span. They don't. They just don't have any time for crap. They don't have any time for padding or, cleverness for its own purpose. They want a story. They want you to tell them a story. So once you got that, once you please the kids, then you can put in stuff for the adults. And the thing is, a lot of the stuff for the adults grows right out of the stories because, um, you know, we would, because we were adults writing them, we would deal with cultural tropes and norms that we knew and we enjoyed as adults and then sort of adapt them for the kids. Um, what kid really knows about film noir, but we had a lot of fun with it. And, um, so in that way you're pleasing the adult audience. You can do some, not necessarily Air Force jokes, but maybe the jokes are a little bit more sophisticated or refer to something that maybe the kids don't understand yet. But even if the kids don't understand it, it's new to them, so it seems cool. Even though it's old hat to the adults, it's an Easter egg for the adults, but to the kids, they think it's cool, even if they can't quite understand it. But it's, so you're basing your story in a genre or a trope or whatever, some creative area. But like I said, you've got to please the kids. You got to keep them happy. You got to keep them interested, and it's a tall order sometimes. And it's got to be funny on top of that. So it didn't seem like hard work. It was a challenge. I never think of this stuff as work. I think of it as a challenge. And I had great backup. I mean, I had Chris Duffy on edits, one of the best editors I've ever worked with, one of the most thoughtful and conscientious editors I've ever worked with. And then backing us up, he was still with us at the time. Stephen Hillensberg would look at everything and suggest changes and, how to strengthen a gag. So they were there to keep the writers honest. And plus, SpongeBob, it's a great concept. It's great, completely silly, ludicrous, crazy concept. And like I said, I worked hard to make these funny and entertaining for the kids. But I hope they were, you know, there was enough there for the adults too. Certainly, it made me laugh, and I made Chris Duffy laugh a few times, which that's uh, that's what that's what it was all about. Dan Donovan, what was it like working with Stan Lee on the NHL Superheroes comics? If you've never heard of them, the Guardians were a group of superheroes, and each one was based on the mascot or name of a National Hockey League character. So you had the Oilers and the Flyers and the Sabres and the Bolts and all that. And Stan Lee was presenting it. I don't think he had a whole lot. I mean, I think he had something to do at the beginning of the creative process, and then it was handed off to a guy who was packaging the whole thing. And what this was it was a series of, I think, 5-page comics that would be in the program of each team. It was a cool idea and successful. They sold a lot more programs with these comics in it, and the kids wanted them, and they became collectibles with hockey fans and all the rest of it. So from the marketing standpoint, it's very successful. Creatively, not so much, and that's where I came in, not to make it not so much creative, but to fix what had happened. So Stan came up with worked with whoever the guy running it, I can't remember his name, worked with him to create the characters. And then that guy hired people to write the stories. Problem is, he hired professional comic artists. He hired some really good people to work on it. Just some terrific artwork in these comics. But he didn't hire professional comic book writers. I don't know who wrote the original stories. And so the 5-page stories came off kind of lame. The other thing that they didn't do was they didn't write a different story for each book. I guess they imagined that, if you lived in Philadelphia, you weren't going to see Ontario's superhero comic. Big mistake. So each story It's pretty much the same story over and over again. There's not a whole lot of difference in the stories. There's no shift in emphasis or anything else. They're pretty much straight up superhero pastiches. And to me, that was the big mistake they made. And Stan thought so as well. So when he got the finished product, they looked gorgeous and they read like, you know, they were stupid. They were poorly written. So they didn't know what to do because they couldn't change the artwork. The artwork was done. So Stan got the idea to hire me. He'd heard my name. He knew my rep. And he reached out to me. And this was like just before Christmas. He reached out to me and he said, "Could you write all of these comics?" I forget it, 30 some comics. Rewrite all the dialogue. Just scrap the dialogue that's there and just and try to fix these things as much as possible. In other words, gag it up. You know, uh, change the language so it's more entertaining. It doesn't read repetitively, and just throw some cleverness in there as much as I could, given that the artwork was already complete. So I went to work, and I did like 3 of these a day until they were all done. And at one point, I'm on the phone with Stan, and it's Christmas Eve. and, and he's apologizing to me. He says, "Oh, I'm taking you away from your family. I'm making you work over Christmas." And I said, "Look, Stan, I talked it over with my wife and the kids. And I said, this is my opportunity to work with Stan Lee, and it was a paycheck. And I said, don't worry about it. Working with you is my Christmas gift to me. So just don't worry about it. I'll work over the holidays and get this done for you." My wife totally understood. And that was the coolest thing about it, was working with Stan. I talked to him. Oh, I talked to him a lot on the phone. From before Christmas all the way through New Year's until these things were done. And he was very pleased with the results. It's not the best writing I've ever done. Under the circumstances, how could it be? But I did what I could, and Stan was extremely appreciative. That I got it all done when I said I would get it done, and the paycheck was pretty fat, so that was good. So everybody was happy. The hockey fans were happy. I was happy. Stan was happy. And what else matters? Dan Bagdoian. Man, is that, yeah, I guess that's the right pronunciation. "I loved your work on G.I. Joe. If ever presented with the opportunity, would you return to writing Joe comics?" Yeah, if the situation was the same, if the opportunity was the same, I would do it again. I loved working with Larry's characters. They were a lot of fun. And again, it was challenging because it's someone else's creation. But as I said before in some of these videos, about Joe, was I was freed from the constraints that Larry had when he created the G.I. Joe characters. I wasn't tied to toy releases or anything else. I could basically take all of the great stuff that Larry had created and just play with it any way I wanted. And what I did was technically a reboot, but it really wasn't. I didn't really change anything that Larry did. I kept the characters basically the same as he did. It's just because I wasn't tied to Hasbro's toy release schedule, I was free to rearrange the circumstances of the characters, making the reveal of Cobra as a terrorist organization, you know, um, drew that out a little bit more over time, which Larry couldn't do. He had to get his villains on stage immediately and get moving because they had toys to sell. And but that was the coolest thing about it, getting to work with Larry stuff free of the constraints that he was free. And the characters are marvelous. They're just wonderful. They're so well delineated, and they're funny, and they all have a different challenge about writing them. In particular, Snake Eyes. Um, Writing a character that can't talk, but but must communicate. It was fun. It was a lot of fun to write. I came up with a lot of gags that I was kind of proud of, to put the character across without words, and also without having all the characters around him talk about him to inform you. He's the perfect character because he can only inform you about himself by what he does, and that makes him pure. And I dug it. I really dug it. And if the circumstances were the same and they weren't going to have me come back and do, Snowflake G.I. Joe, yeah, I'd come back and do G.I. Joe. straight military fantasy about brotherhood and loyalty and courage, yeah, I'd be back in a heartbeat. Christopher Joshua Arndt. Is Bane, in your eyes, still able to defeat Batman in a straight fight, or has he suffered villain decay? You mean from being defeated? No, I don't think. No, Bane's like Batman. He's a never give up kind of character. He may get defeated over and over again, and what villain doesn't? But he's always going to be back for more. He's never going to admit defeat. Yeah, he's never going to admit that Batman is his better. And Batman is his better because Batman is a self-made man, made, a physical and intellectual paragon without the use of drugs, unlike Bane. So, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to see them fight again? I would. Uh, so yeah, I don't, and plus Bane's my boy. So I'm never going to admit that Bane is over, that he's tired. Again with Christopher Joshua Arndt on his favorite subject, villain decay. Is it bad that Iron Man's rogues gallery seems to stay individually stagnant while the protagonist gets more powerful and versatile with every armor upgrade? Melter, Blacklash, etc. definitely suffer villain decay. Well, I got to agree with you because the thing about Iron Man's villains were they were all specialists. They were all anti-Iron Man villains. They were all practically created to defeat Iron Man. They're either all armored up, or they can melt him, or cut him, or do something else to him to get that armor off of him. So they're all of his villains are specialists, and in that aspect, they've got to learn to keep up. Um, and I haven't read Iron Man in a long time, but I don't. Maybe they have, maybe they've upgraded as well, but I don't believe so. So Iron Man's a funny strip, in that it's kind of okay that it remains stagnant. It's okay that it's kind of the same story all the time. He's like Ultraman. You don't watch Ultraman for the story necessarily, but for the situations. Uh, for the that chance that he may not get up this time. Um, Reed Fleming, the world's toughest milkman, was a comic published by Eclipse. Funny comic book if you can ever find it. And Reed Fleming had this soap opera that he watched every day of his life for 20 years, because in the soap opera there was a character in a coma. And Reed never missed an episode because he thought, if I do miss an episode, I might miss the one where he wakes up. So uh, I think that's kind of the way it is with Iron Man. He's going to fight the same guys, and how's he going to come out this time? I mean, there's little nuances in there, in an Iron Man story, but you can see why Iron Man fans love that. There's sort of a comfort in an Iron Man story. I mean, that's what I always found. You balance the. I'm not talking about the movies or anything. I'm talking about the comics. You're balancing the private life of Tony Stark and the complications he has there, with the challenges that Iron Man faces from an ever more determined army of villains that want to see him dead. So it's kind of cool, and it's kind of cool that Tony Stark uses his mind and his abilities with technology and everything to always come out on top in the end. Plus his willpower. For a guy with a weak heart, he's got a lot of heart. Mark Randall, what do you think of DC's decision to raise the price on Batman to $8.99? Will it kill off printed comics? Well, they're damn sure trying, aren't they? $8.99. You're asking only your most diehard fans, the completists, the people with OCD who have to keep their run intact. They're the only ones that are going to shell out $8.99 for a comic book. Are you insane? That's crazy. I mean, you can go to Walmart and get two Blu-rays for that, and have it's just not, the entertainment value isn't there. It's not worth $8.99. And as far as new readers go, forget it. If you had a kid who might be interested in picking up the latest issue of Wolverine or Batman, he's going to see that $8.99 price tag, and either he or grandma is going to say, "There's no way in hell, kid. Look at this thing. I've seen real estate brochures thicker than this. $8.99? Are you crazy? Half of it's ads." So yeah, it's like they're trying to kill it off. They've got to come up with a different format. They've got to come up with another way. There's a lot of different ways to go, and they're not doing any of them. They're just going back to the well over and over and over again, and it can only last so long. And looking at sales figures, it ain't going to be much longer. Greg Wade, alcohol or beer? Neither. I'm not a drinker. I'm just not a drinker. I don't. I'm not saying that I don't drink. I will. I have a bottle of Maker's Mark that usually lasts me about 5 years. Then I have to get another one, and that's the only liquor in the house. And generally, it's only used during cold and flu season. So it's medicinal. Uh, and I just get Maker's Mark because it's the only liquor like that I like the taste of. Beer, I can't stand beer. I think I've had a sip of beer in my entire life. It just seems horrible to me. I think it's from when I was a kid. Our neighborhood tap room, uh, it smelled so skunky that it just put me off beer forever. You know, it's like when you smell broccoli, you don't want to eat it. Uh, so yeah, I've never been much of a drinker. I know I have this reputation as, big brawling He-Man. Yeah, but I'm just a geek. I'm just a big old bearded geek. Um, so there you go. So many fans will go, I can't wait to sit down and have a beer with you. Well, you'll be the only one having it. So hey, Arkhaven, Arctoons, it's a free, I said free, digital comics service. It's brand new. It's high res. You can watch it on your big screen TV and it'll look crystal clear. And we've got some awesome, awesome stuff coming up. We have 32 different series and some of the top talent in the world, lots of action, lots of surprises, lots of just really cool stuff you won't see anywhere else. And it's free. Did I say it was free? It's free, it's cool, it's all for you. And it's an enormous cast of characters and growing all the time. Genres that, every genre you can imagine. And it's been a blast to work on. And it gives me total creative freedom. It unleashes all of my creative powers. But what I need is subscribers. I know the service is free, but if you want to help us out and be a direct subscriber, you can go to Patreon and look up Arkhaven. This is the Chuck Dixon Slush Fund. This is what I pay my artists on my series out of. And I'm doing 4 different series at Arctoons and possibly, well, not possibly, definitely going to add more. And they come out in weekly installments. And you can support us. A lot of people already have. They've made what we've done on Arctoons possible so far. And we'd love you to join us. You can join for $1, $3, $5, and become an Arctoons backer and help me pay those starving artists and keep them drawing, drawing, drawing. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I will see all of you down the road.